Hi everyone and welcome to KRYPTALK, that Irish guy that talks about Bitcoin. This is the second episode of Financial Freedom Fridays, where basically we take myself and one of my friends, or maybe someone I've met or someone I've reached out to, and we talk about Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, trying to reach financial freedom and just kind of getting that kind of getting the wolf away from the door, or maybe setting up your retirement fund, or whatever it is you have. So I'm joined today by Dorian Rogers, a really, really good friend of mine. I was very, very lucky to meet Dorian a few years ago when I went off on my United Arab Emirates adventure and I started teaching over there. He was the very, very first person that I spoke to in the school, and he kind of brought me through the culture, the how the education works, and a few kind of do's and don'ts, and I owe him a lot. He is a poet, he is an MC, he is an artist, he's a music producer, he's a business, he's a dad, and he's a great friend. He's the closest I'm ever going to get to being friends with Donald Glover. And if you don't know who Donald Glover is, you're probably doing life wrong. Dorian, how are you, man?
I'm good, Shane. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm all right. In a day like today, how can Bitcoiners be sad? This is like
That's a good point.
this is the days we kind of be. You don't want to say it, but you say, "I told you, I told you."
It's going so well. I wanted to fly to Dublin for this, but I wasn't invited to a
Yeah,
physical show,
yeah.
a physical meeting, so I'll just do the Zoom today.
When were the last time you were on a plane? Just a random question.
Yeah, I would say like 2 years ago, like right before the summer before the pandemic hit, so like July 2019, believe it or not.
Wow, that's
And
mad.
then that fall hit, and then we would have traveled like in the spring or the summer of 2020, but then February, March is when it all started shutting down. So since then, we haven't.
Yeah, it was this time 2 years ago. We I get a week off next week and or the week after, and I was in New York 2 years ago, and it was the last time I was on a plane. Great trip, but yeah, I do miss traveling. I need to hopefully when things open up, come back and visit you and see all the friends over there as well. So uh, I suppose we'll start off with like why Bitcoin? Like what attracts you to Bitcoin? How did you get started? Why would you bother with this fake digital internet money? It's clearly a scam, right?
It's definitely not a scam, and I was probably one of the biggest skeptics. And this is no commercial for Shane, but definitely want to come on here and talk about how he, not even directly influenced me, but just talking to coworkers about it, and not trying to sell people. That was what really sold me. Basically, I had the honor of working with you, Shane, in Abu Dhabi, and he would just draw charts on the board. That chart stayed on that board for, I think people thought it was educational related, but it stayed on the board for like a year after you left. But, I think there were just like five people in the room from Egypt to South Africa to Lebanon, and everybody was just in the room. And I would just overhear Shane just saying, guys, you need to learn about crypto, you need to learn about Bitcoin. And I didn't think he was selling it or anything, but for me, it was so foreign to me. I wasn't even into investing at the time. I always just believe cash is king. And I really think that's kind of a poverty-based mind state because I come from like a lower middle class family. And I was always against credit. I always was like, if you just have cash, you bury it under the ground. If you come from little money, it's hard to think about, saving it, let alone investing it.
Mm.
So I always would just want to keep money in a bank. And so I think I was just resistant to hearing Shane talk about this. And I didn't even understand, Bitcoin, I literally thought it was a literal coin. I didn't understand it. And then, I'm a hard-headed person, fairly stubborn, but just over a period of time, Shane would never come to me and say, hey, Dorian, you really need to look into it. I just kept overhearing office conversation. And I don't know if you remember, Shane, I don't remember an exact day, but after a while, I just started kind of getting into a conversation with him, kind of sharing my hesitance, just speaking ignorantly, like it's not even, is it a coin or whatever?
Mm.
And I think Shane was just patient, and he just took the time to just share, whether it be various websites where I can look into it myself. We would go to a cafe, and he would just try to start sharing kind of the fundamentals and the basics. And it really just intrigued me that once I started understanding about like it being an algorithm-based concept, to decentralize money. And I started understanding that you don't have to own a whole coin. It didn't have to be an overwhelming thing. So basically, Shane just was talking about it for a period of a year or so, and I'm
It took
not
me a
sure
while.
what
It took
it
me a year.
it took a while. And again, I was disarmed because he was not saying, hey, purchase it through this link or anything. It was nothing about how he could benefit. He was just sharing that this is a vision. And of course, I kept hearing about it in the news. So yada, yada, yada. I eventually also, probably inspired by my wife, who also invests some of her retirement in stocks. And I think she was interested a little bit in crypto. So I knew that I had saved enough money to get away from this poor mentality of just keeping it in a savings account or a checking account. I knew that, you're losing money because of inflation. And so I wanted to start kind of taking baby steps into investing in Apple, Amazon, and why not try a little bit into crypto. And so I eventually heard about a website that was sanctioned or not sanctioned, but was supported or legit through the United Arab Emirates, called BitOasis. And that was what Shane was already into. He legitimized and said he was doing it. He was able to remove money when he wanted to. So I felt safe enough to kind of take a try. And I really just got into it at that point and just wanted to kind of start buying Bitcoin and holding long term. That was my interest.
Yeah, and it's funny. I appreciate the kind words there as well. And it's the whole thing about one thing you've said it to me before, but you picked it out again there. First of all, you hit like a lot of the nails on the head there. You're an example of someone who has invested in Bitcoin, but you have an understanding of what you invested. Some people have little or no knowledge of what they're investing in. Over that year where you were kind of listening, you're dipping in and out of conversation and then asking questions and then research you've done on your own, you have a lot more understanding. And it doesn't matter what you're investing in, whether it's, Bitcoin, another cryptocurrency, or traditional stock, you should do your research and you should read up in it. I mean,
you always told me that too.
Yeah, and I've said it, like a few of my friends have invested as well, but I'll always say, look, like, I'm not qualified to give you financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. That is not my trade. But this has worked for me, and I've done my own research, and it makes sense for me. And it has become a bit of a meme, like that whole do your own research, never invest what you can afford to lose. But that is the best advice I can give anyone doing this. Like, go out and do your own reading and educate yourself. And, like, you clearly have, and you understand it, But there's a lot of people, unfortunately, that FOMO in, and they might FOMO in at the wrong time. For example, if someone had a bit of money behind them and they decided they were going to put 10,000 into Bitcoin when it hit the all-time high of 65,000 or 64,900 a few months ago, then if they got scared when it dropped in half down to 29 and they sold, right, they would now, what would they have had? They'd have 5,000. They basically, and they might be too scared to dip their toe in the water again, which is completely understandable. But if they had just went, you know what, I'm not going to drop 10,000. I'm going to start dollar cost averaging. I might going to put 50 in every paycheck or something like that, and did it slowly. And then when the dip came, if they were still, what do we do to dips, Dorian? We buy those dips, Yeah, look, that's basically the start. There was something there you mentioned there about, I'm not I never try to sell it. If I had a company that sold Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies and I was like, yeah, use this link, you probably would be skeptical because there's something in it for me. There are other people out there that will say, yeah, but if you already have Bitcoin and someone else buys, you've already bought at a lower price, so therefore it's kind of benefiting you in a way. Okay, you could use that argument, but that would mean you're nearly selling as soon as the other person buys. It doesn't really, I don't think that is a worthwhile argument. So my question for you is the next question. So you obviously you've invested in Bitcoin. Currently with the prices so high, do you have a strategy? Are you dollar cost averaging, or have you kind of gone, no, look, the price is a bit too high for me, I'm just going to hodl and hold on to this Bitcoin? Or would you have money set aside to buy the next dip? Or would you go, no, what, I'm happy enough the way it is, I'm just going to wait and see? Are you adding to your Bitcoin portfolio? And if so, how? That's what I'm asking you.
I won't say I have an exact strategy, but basically I bought in at about when Bitcoin is about 12,000. Do you remember those days?
Yeah.
As we speak, it just broke 60,000. So I bought in a considerable amount at 12K, and I saw it, kind of it didn't like boom or anything, right? I think if you remember around that time, that was around 2020, 2000, late 2019. I think
It
around
would
that
have been
time is
mid
when I,
2019, yeah, because it had a
yeah.
little run.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it took me so long to get into it that Shane had like prepared me for some of the obstacles that would come my way. And so I felt like it was good that I took my time because I didn't get scared. So it went from 12K until a certain point and went down to 5K.
Mm.
But I remember by that point, I had already like understood that Shane prepared me like it may drop, Dorian, it may gain, it may drop, but do you believe in Bitcoin long term? And so the time that I took, I wouldn't say I became a scholar on it, but I did like really believe in the institution of Bitcoin. So I had prepared myself, and that was a really a big shock to me because coming from a poor person's mentality, even though I had money, I felt like, wow, the old me would have sold as soon as it started dipping. And I remember it being 5K, like, man, I know this is going to go. I can't wait till it goes past 12. And sure enough, it went past 12. I'm probably getting the timing wrong, but around December 2020, it started, it broke 17K, which was, can you believe that was an all-time high for the longest? And then I'm talking January, February, March, we're in the 40s, 50s, all the way to 64. And then again, it dropped again. I never sold. So for me, it's just kind of like I do buy, but like I think the highest I've bought is probably in the 50s range. I think you remember that time I called you, Shane, like it was in the 50, but then it quickly went to 55. And I really felt at that time it could start going to 100K. This was probably earlier in the year. And Shane was saying, hey, don't panic here, man. It's going to go under 50K again. Be patient. And I think I still kind of panic bought a little bit in the FOMO, even though I had holdings. So I bought like a little bit, maybe $500 to $1,000, like at 54. And so I realize now, just seeing the ebb and flow of Bitcoin, I do believe it's going to go back in the 40s again. So I'm a little more patient with it. I do think it's going to hit 100K soon. But I do feel like, we just had that 30-40% correction only a few months ago.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to hit highs. I think it's going to go lower. And Shane prepared me, said, hey, man, one day it may go close to zero. It's still a chance. But even then, it will one day rebound again because we believe in the institution of crypto and Bitcoin specifically. And also the finite element of it really interests me in the fact that one day, there won't be any more Bitcoin. Yeah. And even if you have one coin, you'll be in the minority. These are things Shane taught me where people will start speaking like in fractions of a coin. So I am over a coin. I do not dollar cost average. I think that's a smart way to kind of get into it. Or if you're a budgeting type person, I think I agree. I think I would want to look into that a little more. I understand the general concept, but currently for me, I feel like when it hits a price that I feel comfortable with, let's say in the 40s or something like that, that's usually when I buy a little more, but I'm actually very happy with where I am currently. So anything extra would just be extra. I almost don't want to buy Bitcoin because I don't want to sell it. Yeah. So I like buying other crypto I don't care about because it's like, okay, if I profit 1,000, all right, sell that, do something fun with it, take it back and put it in my savings. But whenever I touch Bitcoin specifically, I'm like, I don't want to sell Bitcoin. I don't really I don't like doing shorter term plays with Bitcoin. I don't know if that makes sense for you.
Yeah, because it's just that gamble. Even like I'm a strong advocate for dollar cost average, and every time I get paid, I'll buy a small bit. Like again, I do I kind of walk what I talk. Like, I don't do anything silly. Like I just small bit just in case it goes down to zero. I can do without that amount or whatever. I don't think it's ever going to go down to zero, to be honest. We haven't been under $10,000 in over a year now. So I mean, I think it's just about a year. Yeah. So so where I'm at now with the dollar cost averaging is that even all through the dip, I was dollar cost averaging. So like every 2 weeks you get paid, you put a small bit in, forget about it. But now, because it looks like it's going on a run, like I'm even thinking I'll do the same thing, maybe every 2 weeks, but instead of buying, just get the money on the exchange and keep those euros on the exchange. So you're still putting the same amount, still the same amount of risk, which is minimal. And then if it dips down, you buy with that money you've built up. Do you get me? So you're going to get more. I think that the disadvantage, of course, is that if it doesn't look back and it never goes back down under 50 or 60K again, which is unlikely, but that is the risk. So there's pros and cons to both sides. But I, like yourself, I would agree. It's even if it goes up to 100K now, it could crash back down to 50. But here's the thing: the lower points are always higher than the previous lower points. Like everyone looks, if you look at the graph of Bitcoin for the last 5, 10, 12 years, and you track the lowest point it was every single year, even the lower points are getting higher and higher and higher and higher. Like the lowest point so far this year is $29,000. The lowest point last year happened in March 2020 during the big crash when everything crashed. Bitcoin was down around $3,000 or something. I think it was actually $3,800. That low point is still higher than the previous year. That's amazing. Like that is amazing. And even though we're talking about it now, there will be people saying, but look, we've missed the boat. There was people saying they missed the boat at 50. There was people saying they missed the boat at 40, 30, 20, all the way back as far as $1. It can't keep going up forever. We know that. It will eventually stabilize, or a big run up, crash and stabilize, maybe a few years. Who knows? The reason I think it will stabilize is because it's still very young, still very volatile. Amazon, is it the richest company in the world? I know he's the richest man in the world, or Elon Musk. It depends on what day of the week it is. But obviously one of the biggest, most successful companies in the world. It had very volatile swings when it first floated. It actually crashed by over 90% at one stage. I'm pretty sure Apple and a lot of the other tech stocks were notoriously volatile as well because they were new. People didn't know how to value them. People didn't know how to price them, what it was actually worth. Would it go up or down? It was still a risk. Whereas now they're staples. So it's the way I see it. It's like people learn how to swim. They start off and they get a few strokes in and they're doing okay, and then they plunge down. The lifeguard has to get them. There's your dips. But then eventually they stabilize, and they might be the best swimmer in the world, but they can keep afloat. So I'd imagine that's the direction Bitcoins go. So you kind of touched on earlier on. Very simple question. Do you have an exit strategy? Do you have a number? You're like, no, I've discussed this. Now maybe you mentioned your wife, or maybe you discussed with your wife, or maybe you're thinking about your future, or your children's future, or something like that. Do you have a number that you're like, yeah, I think that's the number? And if you don't, you don't. Because I personally, I don't yet, but
I do not have it with Bitcoin, but I'm learning that it is smart for me to have it in general. Mm-hmm. So I've reached maxes, all-time high with other stocks and crypto, and I'll be, I have to find that fine line between greed and fear.
Yeah.
But I could be up at $7,000 on a stock or something, and I'm just like, wow.
Yeah.
It's a gravy train, mm-hmm. Let's sit on it. So I'm not I get anxiety from short-term trading and stuff like that. So I never want to be a day trader, for example. People like, is it going up today, or I'm going to bet against it? And that feels a little more, I don't judge people. It just feels a little bit more like a gamble to me. And I feel like I have a little more impulsive type behavior. Mm-hmm. So I think I could get caught up in that, and it could get more money. And I think you can get high highs and low lows with that. So for me, it's just more so like institutionally investing in things I believe in. Mm-hmm. And I have a good eye, I feel like, for that. So it's a stock called XP. And at one time it was like, when it halved, it was like, the share split or whatever. It was like $90 something a share. And so I was like, high profits. And I think family members were like, yeah, that might be smart to, get a little profit out of it. Just take a little bit. And I'm just like, no, but if I do that, it may go to $20,000 profit. Yeah. And so now it's like half of what it's worth, and I may just be broken even on it. And I kind of regret that. Like, hey, I need to figure out a better strategy. Like when I'm doing really well in something, unless I believe in it, like Bitcoin, Shane advised, and I agree with, I don't really want to touch it. Now if it gets like $250,000, I think that's just like a general ballpark range. I do feel like it would be smart to start kind of pulling some away. I'm not saying if it hits 100K, I won't pull a little bit, because I think I initially told you, Shane, that I wanted to always get to one coin. And then of course, the next goal would be two, and then if you get to two, there is a certain part where you although you don't want to touch any of it ideally, there is a certain point where you've invested a little more than you ideally wanted, and some of that could be a little play money.
Yeah.
So Shane taught me, like, maybe you buy some chain link and you start profiting on that. So you dump some of that profit into Bitcoin. So you may get a little more than you initially wanted to hold on to. So I do have like this wiggle room of maybe 0.1 to 0.3 or something. Where I feel like I could play with. That's the first step I would play with. If it reached to like astronomical heights, which would be like probably 100K. I do feel like, why not pull away 10K or something, just to enjoy the fruits of my labor a little bit. Shane, you taught me a little bit about that. Like invest it back into things that you love to do, because it all could go to zero. Nothing is solid when it comes to investment. But currently, I just don't have that figure, because as I've tried to research, like, just get away from the bulls and the bears, but just try to find like research-based scholarly information on Bitcoin projections. And, they are saying in the next 10, 15 years, it could reach, past $250,000, $500,000 a coin. And, that's when you're talking about major institutional wealth. And that's kind of like starting to get into retirement plan type stuff. So I would hate to wait to try to pull everything at an earlier stage when I really believe that Bitcoin is going to get more finite, more scarce in the next 10 to 15 years. And by that time, inshallah, if I'm still living, I'll be in my 40s or early 50s. That's a good time to see where Bitcoin could be if it's doing this great in my 30s. So I don't have that amount for Bitcoin. I'm starting to become a longer term investor for Ethereum as well. I really believe in Ethereum. But I do have, I'm learning to be a little more smart when it comes to pulling out of investments and other stuff that I'm not as emotionally tied to. So once it starts getting in decent profits, I'm going to start taking away from other things, as I've missed the bus so many times. Like, I've hit good profits and I'm just like, I want to get more. And I think that's something I just have to study up on more, is like when to pull out.
You're well and truly on the bus anyway. You're in under 12K, you're 100% on the bus. So you need to enjoy the bus ride. Just the way you spoke there.
I'm talking about in general, though.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I could be profiting well, and I don't pull out anything. I just I don't need it right now. And then I'll end up losing the profit. And so I have to find that balance of kind of knowing when to take some profits. You don't have to take all of them, but understand that it's all a risk. And I think some of these big dips recently have just taught me that the whole thing is volatile. So unless you really believe in it long term, then it's okay to pull away some profits.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're in the wrong game if you can't deal with the volatility. There's I remember it's just, I suppose it's that fear and greed balance. I know that if someone told me, for whatever reason, let's say someone says you have to sell today, and if I was to take that out today, I would have absolute nothing but gratitude for how it's worked out for me. Because at the end of the day, the reason you do this really, there is so much more important things than the money or the value or the wealth, whatever you want to call it. It's about you have a finite time on this planet, and whether it's spending time with your family, your friends, your hobbies, that kind of thing, and to invest in that is maybe you have a passion, a business like yourself or something like art, and it is realistically about that. So I suppose the cash kind of drives that. What I'm trying to say is that there's that balance of fear and greed where you're kind of going, will I miss the boat on this? If I'm going to sell at 50 in 6 months to a year's time, is it going to be worth 100 or 200? I first-hand experience, because the first time I bought Bitcoin, I bought a full Bitcoin in 2017. I think it was late October for €6,500. And this time, it was really a lot of people, Bitcoin is pretty much a household name now. People mightn't be able to understand it, but it is, I think it's nearly a household name now. But I had been following it at that stage for probably 2 years. So the same way you said you were mentally prepared for the dips because we were having conversation, you were doing your own research, I was the same. So I knew this was going to crash, especially that was 2017 bull run, which was hysteria. So I ended up selling, obviously profiting, but keeping a quarter Bitcoin in. So, but at that stage I was I was going to just my original plan was, I'm going to buy one, I'm going to wait until it goes up to X amount and I'll sell it off. But then when I saw it going up, I was like, no, I want to stay in the game. Like, there is a bit of kind of like, there is that bit of an emotional attachment, or maybe you call it greed. I'm not sure what you call it. It is exciting, but I was disciplined enough to take out, make profit, and then keep that quarter in, and then I started building up. Like, you know what I mean? Like, my portfolio is better now. Like, you know, but it's because I saw the long term potential in it. I think 100,000 is conservative. My own personal price target, which I've been talking about for probably 6 months to a year now, is $88,000. I think that's a cert. Like realistically, like I just do a quick check in the price now. I know we're back above 60 now. I think we're flirting with 60.
Yeah, 688.5.
Yeah, so you're talking like,
since this conversation started, it's up $700.
Yeah, so the highest I've got
I like
here.
your mentality. Like, excuse me for interrupting.
You're okay.
I like your mentality. Like, you have no regret. So, like, if you wanted to sell at 30K, and if you were able to get 6K profit, I'm just making something up. If you're able to get 6K profit and that was able to help you to invest in a new computer or office space or whatever, I think what you're saying, if I'm correct, is that if it hits 100K and that profit could have been $70,000, you wouldn't look at it at that time like, dang, why didn't I hold on? And I could have did this, or I could have did that. At the time, you did the best that you knew to do, because you also could have lost 20K, you know, or whatever. You could have lost the Bitcoin, or it could have gone to zero. So I think you can't have that. I don't know if you can or can't have the recency bias. You know, I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is that you have to, when you make a decision, you have to live with it, because I have to live with decisions of when I've held on too long. Litecoin is an example. I had no emotional attachment to Litecoin. I just saw it was something that everybody was talking about. And so at one point, I just put a few thousand in the Litecoin, but I had been profiting like $7,000, $10,000. And now if you look at Litecoin, it's dipped 50% or more. So I'm like at a break-even point, you know, but like, why didn't I pull out a little something? I didn't believe in Litecoin like Bitcoin or Ethereum. I still know nothing about it, but you know, I'm still just holding on to it, hoping that I get back to a profit level. But I could have sold that profit, put in some of it to something I believed in. So for me, it's greed that I'm dealing with. But nothing wrong with emotional attachment. But I think a person has to check themselves as far as how they deal with emotional maturity and things. And since I have an impulsive, arguably addictive personality at times, I have to make bigger decisions internally before I get caught up in a situation where, hey, I'm up 10,000.
Exactly.
When the impulse hits, it's like, well, let it go to 20, let it go to 50,000. But you know, that wise person would make a decision that's kind of measured and balanced, so that you hedge both sides of the fence, right? If you lose, okay, well, at least I took some of the profit out. But my thing is, in the past, I've just sat on the profit, and I've learned that lesson where I don't want to keep making that mistake where
getting rich on paper.
Always buy back. You can always buy back when it dips. There's nothing wrong with taking out some money and putting it in your savings.
Well, this next part then is probably something you want to hear. So like I mentioned earlier on, dollar cost
61,000. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay. It's like, you know, hopefully, like there's 2 points really that I want to make. You kind of reminded me of one there. If I mentioned earlier on about dollar cost averaging, and you know, every 2 weeks I get paid, and I put a small bit in Bitcoin, and you know, that's it. But with the way it is at the moment, because it's so expensive, and it looks like it looks like we could have an all-time high in the next few days. Even it could happen tonight. It's so expensive that, and inevitably it'll crash down eventually. For me personally, I'm thinking it makes more sense, instead of like buying that, let's say, I know, $50 or $100 every 2 weeks or whatever it is, just putting that on the exchange and get ready to execute an order. Let that build up. If that takes a few months, that's fine, because then you know a few hundred, a few thousand, whatever, and then execute that buy order when it's low. So have put in like a buy order for like, I don't know, 40,000 or 50,000 or whatever you think it's gonna drop down to. Maybe even it wicks down to 20,000. Unlikely, I think, at the moment. So that's one thing. Another thing is, say there, you know, that $88,000 prediction I have is based on returns after every halving. So at the moment, every 10 minutes, 6.25 new Bitcoin are created, and in 2024 that will get cut down from 6.25 to half of that, watch, 3.125. So that creates scarcity, and that usually creates another bull run. Now the cycles aren't always the same, but that seems to be playing out just like a train on the rails at the moment, you know. So if that's the case, then and that prediction that I have, that conservative $88,000 prediction, I should be taking my own advice when it hits that, going, okay, you said it would go like this. Are you just going to wait? So, like, I do think that I could. What I'm probably going to do is, like, let's say, hypothetically, if someone owns one Bitcoin, they could sell zero point 0.1 at their price target, or they could sell 25%. They could sell 0.25. Keep the dollars or the euros or the pounds or the won or whatever they have on the exchange, and set a sell order for a target that they think is going to be hit. And that, you know, that's where your TA comes in. That's where you're watching your YouTubers come in. And like when you're watching YouTubers, like you really should watch a few of them and figure out who you think is talking sense and who isn't. There is a lot of people out there who have these outrageous thumbnails just to get you in. If I'm putting a thumbnail up there, there's some sort of reasoning behind it. You know, even if you see a thumbnail that I have up, which is like Bitcoin to 1 million, chances are that that particular thumbnail or that phrase or that title is referenced for a reason inside in the episode itself. Maybe it's a analyst, a Bitcoin analyst, or who is far more qualified than me, like Willy Woo or Plan B or whoever, and they're actually saying that it could possibly hit 1 million by a certain time frame. It's not just random clickbait. I don't like that, and I think that people who are into Bitcoin should be reading everything. Read the white paper. That is basically like it's an 8-page document which just outlines how Bitcoin works from Satoshi. Read everything you can get your hands on. So don't base your investment strategy on one YouTuber or YouTubers in general or Twitter. Read everything and read the negative press as well.
Yeah, I try to find people who are more balanced. You know, there are YouTube channels where, you know, they're kind of covering what's going on in crypto or Bitcoin. And you know, through, you know, they're honest when it's dipping. They might say, hey, man, the bears are killing it. You know, so they're more like, they're passionate. Like, I liken it to a sports lover, right? So I love my teams, but I also love sports. So I learned to not just be a fanatic of my team. And so I liken that to, like, you can find people, of course, it takes some reading, like you're saying, and some filtering, because as you know, people have motives, right? Somebody might have a Bitcoin bull type show because they're betting that they want it to go up, you know, of course. But I think somebody like you, for example, when you watch your show, of course, you tell people, hey, I'm a bull. I want to see Bitcoin rise. But a lot of times when you watch your show or your episode, you're talking about like news. You may bring up something that's a bearish trend. So I think there are people there that just basically love the sport, if we can call it that.
Yeah,
you understand what I'm saying? I could fairly analyze another team, somebody that just beat my team, because I can respect the game for what it is. And so I'm not such a researcher where I can name who those people are, but while I'm going through YouTube channels, I can kind of filter out what is this person talking about and what is their motive, and you know, are they sharing graphs and things that I can read and understand from a layman's standpoint. But yeah, I definitely agree. You have to be careful with who you watch and what is their motive. And what is do they have expertise? Do they know how to analyze and do analytics and, you know, and number crunching and things of that nature?
And it's like I did mention earlier on that kind of joke that, like, you know, I always will say, like, I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Do your own research. Never invest more than you can afford to lose. It's like a mantra because no one wants to get sued. But at the same time, it's such a new technology. There is no course you can do. Like, not that I'm aware of, like, you know, a master's in cryptocurrency or whatever. Maybe there is, and I don't know, but there will be. It's going to be, it's here to stay. At the moment, like the way I see this playing out, at the moment, this pump here, I see an all-time high happening probably for the end of the month. 100 grand could happen by the end of the year. That's not hopium either. Like, I'm basing that on we've had a 50% correction, and we are still here, literally percentages away from the all-time high, less than 10%. an
And some
ETF.
crazy news.
Yeah,
Like China banning it, all
didn't
right, well,
matter.
China banned it. Okay, well,
Didn't
that
matter.
pumps it up, right?
Yeah.
Texas is now, we're trying to recruit those people, so there's just, I think people are so resilient. They see that Bitcoin is resilient through the negative news. And so now when another country tries to ban it or something, it's like, okay,
it is the perfect currency.
What can't Bitcoin handle? Some people will say, okay, it doesn't meet all elements of a currency. It may not have this or this element, but it's also a whole new thing. And, and a lot of people are just holding on to it. So even if you criticize and say, okay, well, it lacks functionality. Okay, well, the store of value is stronger than a lot of other, currencies or concepts as well,
But even the functionality, the fact that it's deflationary and tends to go up in value against the US dollar, that is definitely a function. You can't say it lacks functionality. You can send billions from one part of the world to another. You can't do that with gold. You can't do that with dollars. You can carry your bank around I'm not sure why you would want to, but in your hand. So like there are major changes coming, and I do think governments are getting a bit threatened by it. However, like China, like I wouldn't bother, like China they ban everything. They've got their own version of a WhatsApp, Facebook, I think Google as well. Like, so I look, it was always going to happen, I think, but it shows how resilient it was, like you said, because of the miners shutting up shop there and going to Miami, going to Texas, just like you said. I'm not going to say what's going on in the world at the moment because I don't want to get a strike or whatever, but it survived that. It flourished during that. Cash is on its way out, realistically, whether we like to admit it or not. We have an ETF, so an exchange traded fund. Basically, it's a more traditional way of trading Bitcoin, which we've never had one in the States, or they've never had one in the States. There's one in Canada, I think in other countries. It's a more traditional way of trading Bitcoin, like on a stock exchange. They have been trying to get through these. The Winklevoss twins and other companies have been trying to get this past the SEC, and it's coming out now that there's strong rumors from Bloomberg, from I can't remember the name of the person involved in the SEC, who is basically warning, saying if you're invested in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, make sure you've done your research. So it looks like on Monday, and they've also said they're not going to block. The SEC, they basically get the green light or the red light for these exchange traded funds to happen. And it looks like they're going to approve one as early as Monday. Bitcoin weekends are volatile. We could see an all-time high tonight. We could see an all-time high this weekend. But if we don't, now this is the way I see this playing out. I see it. It's not just a feeling. It's more than a feeling. No pun intended. From my experience and what I've seen, and knowing Bitcoin on the weekends, I'm putting it out there. I think that it might not hit an all-time high this weekend. You might go up to maybe 62, maybe 63. If that news gets released on Monday, it's going to go crazy. It's going to be like because it's the biggest news ever. It's going to be like probably bigger news than Tesla buying Bitcoin. We got a $6,000 daily candle that day. It's just going to go crazy. Now, there is a caveat. There is a warning. Back in 2017, the CME, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, which basically traded Bitcoin futures, essentially allowed people to bet on the future price of Bitcoin. When that launched, I think it was in December 17th, if I'm right. I'm pretty sure that's when Bitcoin hit its peak. So it was like a buy the rumor, sell the news situation. The price climbed on this rumor because they thought it'd be positive, and then bang, people started shorting it, and it went into a year bear market. Now, if this happened, this could happen. It could climb up to 100,000, and then if this gets launched, then it could all the way up. The price could increase, and then it could crash again. Maybe it goes down to 50, maybe it goes down to 30, but we're still a lot better than 3,000. So that's just...
The thing is like if you have a long-term mentality, which I know you do, if I don't even really care about touching Bitcoin for 5 to 10 more years, it helps you to like not get too excited about the highs and not too down about the lows.
Exactly.
You taught me that. Sometimes
Emotionless.
I'll send messages saying, and I'll be like, man, we hit 50, and he's like excited, but he's like, I told you it's going higher. So it could be a point that it could hit 100 and then go to 50. So maybe I would think oh man, I should have sold some, right? Because I see it dropping to 50. But even though it may take a week to go from 100 to 50, I'll never sell in those situations.
Yeah.
I'll just be like, but I bet one day it'll be over 100 again.
Yeah.
So I think, the people who are a little more strategic with these things, I think it does take some skill, but they would know when to kind of sell a little bit. If it hits 100, maybe you have, Shane, you mentioned that maybe you would do a 10% thing here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not against it, but I feel like, yeah, but there's a chance they go from 100 to 150 and we never see 50 again.
That's when patience comes in.
I know I was wrong the last time I thought that. I talked to you about that. And you're like, no, Dorian, it'll go down, it'll go up, it'll go down. So I'm just realizing I'm trying to get a more intuitive approach to dips and runs and stuff. And I know it's not going to go to 1 million and then go, and never go down again. So it more moves like this. And, it would be strategic for me. I think it would be smart to know at a certain time, play around a little bit, sell a little bit, and if it goes down, you can buy and even profit more. But there goes that thing about what's greed, and it fits my personality more for at least Bitcoin. Like I feel more comfortable just holding.
Yeah.
But I like when people know how to do that. There are some great YouTube channels that like the buy, sell.
Yeah. One of the
charts.
Indicators.
And they usually look really accurate, because it'll say buy, and that's when you really literally see it going up, and they say sell, and that's when it starts going down. And if you pay close attention, if you want to move on an hourly basis, that is a smart way to, I think, do it. But for me, it's like that takes a lot of work. And for me, I'd rather just
live your life. You'd rather live your life. I'm the same, man.
Point, like, even now, hey, you remember I told you that time I bought at 54? Well, right now at 61, that sounds like a smart move right now.
It is a smart move. It absolutely is.
When it was 29, it didn't seem like it.
Yeah.
So it's just all about having this longer term approach. But like, even right now, let's say I wanted to sell and say, hey, I need $2,000. It's at 61. Yeah, I wouldn't hurt any bit, but for me, it's just like, I believe it'll go to 100. So why? If I need it, well, I think you always taught me that as well. Like, if you believe in it, hold on to it. If you need some money, you pull it out like a bank account. Yeah. Will it go to 30 again? Yep, probably. But will it probably go to 120 as well? Yep. So
that's it.
Just hold on to it when you need it. If you want to take some gambles when you're getting into good profits and pull out some, go right ahead. But for me, unless I need it, I'm like, why? It's not I could treat myself a little bit like you said, but
yeah, I'd be reluctant to if for some reason, like, again, like I'm I'm comfortable, I'm happy, but I'm kind of, if I needed money for whatever reason, I think I'd be more likely to get a bank loan than sell cryptocurrency.
Like, are you tempted right now with it being 61? Are you tempted, since this is really high, to say, hey, let's just take out a little profit here?
No.
So even if it's about a dip to 30, you wouldn't be like, dang, I wish I would have pulled out a little bit.
But it did dip to 30 over the summer, and I didn't sell any. I'll kind of summarize up with this. If you go back to any of my episodes since that dip and even before that, you will never hear me say the bull run is over. Not once did I say that. Do there was times where I was like, if this happens and this happens and this happens, I might get concerned that this is over. I never said the bull run is over, because I never believed that the bull run is over. It's such a tempting thumbnail, but I'm glad I never pulled that trigger, because I didn't believe it. So and I've stayed true on that prediction, and like I thought it would happen before the 6th of July. I was wrong about that. Hands in the air. You can't get it all right, but I would rather wait and be patient and hit the target later than not at all. So I think So
let me ask you real quick though. So wouldn't it be beneficial if it's going to dip from 61, or let's say it goes up to 70 or whatever, but let's say it eventually will dip to 30. Why, when it's not high? I guess I'm really asking to help me. Why, when it's high, why wouldn't we pull out, let's say, $5,000 now? Because we know it will go under 61 days.
Momentum.
And then could we reinvest that at that point? And then that would be more profit margin for us? Like, what's the reason that you don't sell a little bit when it's super high?
Momentum. Like right now, when it's just easing towards the, first of all, there's the TA. We've already had that dip. it looks like it's in a massive ascending triangle. They break to the upside 80% of the time. Now, I haven't really had a good look at that, but it does look like that's going to happen. It's gone up, hit 64,900. It's come down. It's going to go up again. What I think it's going to do, it's going to come up and probably hit the all-time high thereabouts again, and then drop down a small bit and then go up. So it's in an ascending. Looks like it's in a large ascending triangle pattern. Like I said, they break to the upside or bullish 80% of the time. There is the momentum factor. Right now, Russia are going to be accepting as payments. They're having that conversation. And then we had this ETF news, which is arguably the biggest news in Bitcoin's ever history. So right now, it would be a wrong time to sell, personally, I think. Could be wrong, but that's what I think. I would say if it smashes through the all-time high, setting a new all-time high and goes up to about 70, 75, that'd be a good time. Based on the TA, I'd have to take a closer look exactly what my target would be, and then maybe sell 0.1 while it's gone up. Because a lot of people don't do that, because when it's high, they don't sell them, when it's low, so you're going against your emotion. But that's where your TA comes in, and that's where your plan comes in, and you put the emotion aside and you don't get euphoric. And it's hard. It is definitely hard, because we're all human. We're emotional beings. Sometimes in this market, you are controlled by fear and greed. So yeah, that's basically it's the reason to answer your question is because of momentum and the other factors. No one factor what's going on. It wouldn't make sense to do that. It looks like it's going to hit an all-time high.
Well, I feel vindicated, man. You and me talk about this all the time, but when it hit 29 after the crash from 64, I think a lot of people were talking mess.
Yeah.
And now that it's back up and we've held on, we didn't sell. Now we're just,
You were
a little more chill energy right now.
Yeah, you were Jedi level cool during that. It's impressive.
No big surprise here.
Diamond hands. Look, man, we're gonna finish up there. I have one last question that I'm gonna ask you. I got asked this question on a podcast they did in Ireland recently. Really, really good podcast called Shark Pod. I've mentioned it twice actually in this week and last week. I just thought it was really, really good. It was really nice to be asked. But they asked me a question which it was really simple, but I think you'd really enjoy answering it. So this will be the last question before we wrap things up. So, how much money is enough money?
I would say $1 million. But I'm really all for figuring out institutional wealth at this point. I think we've talked about this before, and you've even spoken on some research you found about how some African Americans who missed a lot of the institutional wealth opportunities just because of the inequity that has happened in American history, which American slavery and things of that nature, unfair housing practices where a lot of people of color just didn't have fair opportunities at this American dream. Yeah. And so I think you actually told me about some research where
it's closing
some of these wealth gaps, where people of color, and I know Ireland has a history with some people being of lower income backgrounds and how they were mistreated in Europe and things in European history. So I believe it's a great opportunity. Of course, rich people are getting richer, but I feel like people who may have come from lower income backgrounds really it's like an equalizer, and we have fair opportunity at reaching, higher levels of institutional wealth. And so for me, it isn't really, I don't want to do a shorter play and say, okay, it's 200,000. Yeah. We know that in today's life, you need like $30,000 to $50,000 just to live per year. So I'm thinking long term here, and I want to be able to pass on not only money but financial know-how to my children and their children, but inshallah, even investments, even possibly some cryptocurrency. So I would say $1 million is like ideally a great, of course, target. Yeah. But why not look into bigger levels of wealth where, it can provide for, my future generation. So even if I don't feel like I would cash out at $1 million and get out of the game, because you could spend $1 million, if you live to 75 or 80, you could spend that $1 million just on retirement. Yeah. So I think at $1 million, I definitely would be looking to kind of maybe make other maybe longer term, like a Roth IRA, like more secure, longer term investments. But I'm sure that's a magic number for a lot of people. Yeah, I'd imagine. That point is where I would try to get in more secured situations. Yeah. But I don't know if I would ever exit from Bitcoin altogether.
Gotcha. I'd be similar. I think I'd always keep some. The research I was referring to, it was a book actually called Bitcoin in Black America. I haven't read it myself. It's on my stack of books to read that I always want. It takes a second to go, oh, that looks interesting, and then I've got to commit to read it. But the Bitcoin Standard and Bitcoin and Black America. From what I hear is the book to read. So thank you very much for.
I can hear your answer before you go, though.
Oh, my answer. I've actually I answered it last week, but it always is the same, Dorian. It's not really necessarily a number. I suppose it's a bit lower, but it's if I could pay off my mortgage straight away, so that'd be it. Because then when you're getting paid, it's your own paycheck is yours, and you can do whatever you want with it. So and not having to pay rent or mortgage, I think that'd be it. Because like I think we're kind of similar. We're both like. We're both happy. We both have gratitude for what we have, and that is I think the main thing. Like, but so I don't need any more really in a sense. But yeah, it would be nice to just go. Don't have to pay rent, don't have to pay a mortgage. Like so keep it simple, but still a drastic amount of money. But look, I hope the next time we're talking is in about 20 minutes time when Bitcoin hits an all-time high. When I see your name on my phone, I know it's good news. Like so, it's a good thing. Look, Dorian, thank you very much for coming on the show and giving up your time. And it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And, just really, really happy to have you on. Do you want to do a plug for your own companies there, if you want to?
Yeah, briefly. I started a poetry open mic night in 2012 in Abu Dhabi called Rooftop Rhythms. We've gone on to do open mics also in the Arabic language. We do cultural event curation, and some nightlife events like silent discos and things. Of course, that has slowed down a little bit, because of the pandemic. But we're blessed to still do our monthly poetry shows in partnership with the Art Center at NYU Abu Dhabi, with official support of the U.S. Mission or the U.S. Embassy to the UAE. So I'm just very blessed on that side. That's called Rooftop Rhythms. You go to rooftopRhythms.org. But before I leave, I just want to thank you, Shane. I know you never did that intentionally to try to sell me on Bitcoin, but through overhearing your knowledge and your patience of just being open-minded to all my questions, I really feel like I've started my track for institutional wealth, and I'm doing really well for myself when it comes to investing in crypto. And that has a lot to do with your selflessness and your dedication to just spreading the knowledge about crypto and Bitcoin. So everybody, please give a emoji clap for Shane. Thanks. I told you do need to monetize what you do, and I think that should be through one-on-one consultation, because I think you have enough testimony. I understand doing stuff for free to build your name and your character and your reputation, but I feel like you've done that, and you have a lot of people, I think, that could speak up for the amazing work that you do. And your channel is a blessing. I watch your videos, and I hope you continue to find ways to monetize your talent of teaching.
Thanks very much. I really appreciate that. For right now, folks, we're done. If you are still watching this, if you're one of the 4 people that will watch this, I'm joking. If you could please like and subscribe, it really does help the channel. We're on 329 subscribers. The journey to 1,000 subscribers has well and truly begun. I really do appreciate it. If you're watching it, thank you. Click that like and subscribe button. And as usual, sláinte. Bye.